Hey guys, this is Tina B.
And Charmaine G.
We're here to talk about the messiness of life. It's ugly.
And it's raw.
It's real.
And it's a freaking game.
It's whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole!
Whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole!
Whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole!
This is us.
And our gift to you.
Hello and welcome.
Welcome, wackos.
Oh, here we are, a new week.
I love Tuesdays. I'm
Me
jazzed.
too.
I am so jazzed for this.
And not just because I leave work 15 minutes early.
And first time for everything, we have a guest on our
Yes.
show. Should we do an intro?
Sure.
All right. I'll let you speak for yourself, young man.
I am Dr. Craig Booth. I grew up in St. George. I came back here in 1973 to be a general practitioner. Delivered 2,500 babies over the next 15 years. Wow. I was our first medical director at the hospital, and I am now helping run the Booth Wellness Center on campus and the free clinic.
How exciting. That is so exciting. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
your
gracing
time.
us.
Great to be
today.
here. This sounds fun.
All right.
I'm hopeful.
Well, and as always, it's Charmaine G.
And I am Tina B. And as always, we are adults having adult conversations. So if you've got kiddos around, you may want to listen when they're not around. We are live right now, so nothing
Can't
will be
edit
edited.
it.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
it's going to be out there and raw, but you certainly can listen anywhere you get your podcast, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeart, any of those outlets. You can
Facebook,
listen later and edit it yourself. You can turn down or just listen to it while you're
taking
I
a
don't
hot
know,
bath
in the shower. Totally,
decompressing,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, so I need to start off with one thing, and I want to give as much time to our guest and our topic as possible, and this isn't my deal this week. So last week, Charmaine brought up our world mole, which was war, and how we have troops over. We were talking about how many of our guys have been over there, how many of our people have been over there and have come back with PTSD and so on and so forth, and thanking them for their service. And Tina B, that's me, I made a mistake by calling our troops our boys. And we all know that we have men and women. I would
Very
never,
true.
the last thing I would ever want to do is to shortchange my gender because, well, we're the stronger gender, so.
And that happened.
That did happen. So, ladies, please forgive me. All the men and women, our troops, that give so freely of their lives so that we can continue to live in this free country. That's a really big deal.
Amen. Amen.
I apologize. My apologies. And
I think
learned
those
from that
troops would be the
probably,
last
yeah.
people to be offended by a comment like that.
Because
I would
it's-
hope so. Why do you think that?
It's just that they're already tough. They're not super sensitive like half our society.
Look at us. I'm liking it already. Okay,
Well,
Mr. Man.
we have decided to forego the world mall just to get straight into the topics, to the nuts and the guts and the butts. So real quick, though, just a quick blurb. The debate's on tonight, everyone. That's all I'm going to say. I'm so excited to watch the debate. So again, this week is my topic, and I've just announced to Tina and Doc that we are going to be talking about postpartum depression.
Okay.
Postpartum depression. Seriously, so many people think, well, how can I relate to that? I'm a man. That's why I invited our guest, because
Yay!
he can definitely identify that this is not specific to the person, the patient in the chair that's suffering, but it is wholeheartedly effective to the household, to the family unit itself. So I'm going to start off by sharing and becoming a little bit naked in this version, because I'm a happy person. I mean, I'm always feeling like I'm on an energy level for the amount of 10 and not just caffeine that I'm drinking every day. But I never thought I would be able to have kids. I was in a marriage prior to this, and we just never even, I mean, and it's not like we didn't practice or anything. We just never became pregnant.
Thank you.
Right. Well, that's your
Clarifying.
visual for the week. We never did become pregnant in 11 years of marriage. I mean, isn't that a pretty significant what's going on there? So with that being said, later on down the road, when we found out right when we were married that we were expecting a child, I thought, oh my gosh, like this is a miracle. Like I didn't know like how to process that because I've always been a corporate raider and working in the workforce, but it was almost a part of me that was missing, right? So then I carry the child, and I carried it low and hard, and it hurts. I mean, your body gets rocked.
What month did you give birth?
Which one? I have
The
two
first.
children.
Mhm.
So March, the end of
Okay.
March. So it was nice. I was fat and plump during the winter and like, all nice and meaty. And then when he came, I mean, I remember sitting there being so far out that I couldn't even see my feet thinking, oh shit, this has got to come out of me. Like, how is this going to happen? And all those things. You don't even think about the mental piece to it, like how to prepare. You're trying to get everything organized and, your freezer meals. Yay. And I'm not built like that. But at the same time, I had my son and everything I've ever known was gone. Like my what I thought life to be. I literally joke around and say that my children are the biggest blessing, and then they suck the life right out of me.
Yeah, well,
it was
there you go.
gone.
That's pretty accurate.
It was really gone.
And not just at birth. Like that's a...
Literally. I mean, as women, I think our chemical values change monthly. And then it takes about a year, from what I've understood, for it to come back after you have a child, for your levels to come back to normalcy, if they ever really do. I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Booth, but finishing this story, I wanted to tell you how real it was. It wasn't just sitting there feeling like I was a milkmaid on the couch in the basement and no adults talked to me for months because I was so scared to keep this infant alive and RSV and all those things, that I was trying to really just learn a whole new part of who I was, that I literally was so gone, like in my mind space, that I got into the car one day. And this was about 6 weeks after having Landon, and I drove for 12 hours straight. I did stop, and
Where the hell did you go?
all around town. I just drove.
Okay, so you didn't take off out of
Nope.
state or something.
I
You
just drove around town, and I would pull over when he'd cry, and I'd nurse him in the back seat, and then I'd get back in the front. I've never experienced something that was so clear and cut that something was wrong.
Dark. It was dark for you.
Very dark.
Okay.
And I have to say, thank God that happened for me, because the smaller symptoms that, irritability, insomnia, things that we experience as a new mom creep up on you. But when it goes physical to where you're so anxious that you're just driving around to soothe yourself, I immediately called my doctor and said something's wrong. Something I've never experienced in my life, and I can't live another day. Not that I was understanding what was going on, but I knew I needed immediate help. Am I the only one?
I think so. I don't know of one other woman who ever had postpartum depression besides you. PPD,
Thank God I knew I was unique, but
PPD, as we'd call it. PTSD is a relatively new term. We've only been talking about that for 20 years. PPD in the early 70s, when I came into practice, was just being talked about in the world. And postpartum depression was being recognized as a real thing. Women who had their babies in the 40s and 50s couldn't be depressed. They were too busy. Life was going on. They had no choice but to buck it up. Their husbands didn't know anything about postpartum depression. It was not discussed as a separate entity. But beginning in the early 70s, it came out of the closet, so to speak. And women at that same time, the ERA started to hit us, and women began to stand up and say, hey, look at us, we're depressed. This having babies ruins us physically and psychologically and emotionally, creates all kinds of damage in those 3 areas of our lives. What can we do about it? And at that time, all of us, men, women, children, began to recognize this is a real entity. And so the studies began. everyone wanted to blame it on hormones to begin with. But as
I thought that's what it was.
well,
no?
as Charmaine was saying, though, a lot of it just had to do with the total transformation of the body. And I mean, here, a little 5'2" skinny little girl gets pregnant, gains 40 or 50 pounds,
Oh, it's so lovely.
has a 7-pound baby, and still looks like a wonk. They're still way overweight. They're disproportionately shaped. They feel terrible. I remember back in the 70s, I had two quite thin girls who were teaching aerobics in St. George, the very first part of aerobics. These two gals had 3 or 4 babies with me, and within 2 months after they'd had the babies, they were back in total shape.
Wow.
And everyone in town hated their guts
Right,
because
of
they
course.
could do it. I had another patient at the same time who was tall, thin, and gorgeous, who gained 70 pounds with each of her pregnancies. And it would almost put her into a psychosis, into a total mental breakdown, until she could get back to her normal weight and feel good about herself. Along during that time came Prozac. Prozac is the greatest thing since penicillin.
He's a
because
Prozac pusher. He likes
We
that.
not only had something to help with postpartum depression, we had something worthwhile, something effective that worked in regular depression. Men
Is it
and
true?
women.
Can I ask you a question about that very quickly? And I'll
No,
let
no
you-
questions.
Okay.
I don't know anything beyond that.
So, isn't it true that you can take Prozac while you're pregnant as well?
Yeah, it's a class 2 medication,
Okay.
which is deemed safe
Okay.
during pregnancy. And so the literature always says the physician and patient need to weigh the possible risks. But I've never seen a baby come from a Prozac pregnancy that had a definable defect
Okay.
that we could blame on Prozac or any of its cousins. There's like 15 now
Okay.
in that family. So I think more importantly than just the hormone changes, and those are amazing, the hormones that go on with pregnancy and the immediate postpartum stage, especially in a nursing mom. Physicians prior to the 70s just didn't know how to deal with them. And in the 70s, we began to develop the chemical tests that we could measure those hormone levels. And we watched them change so drastically in the postpartum state that we were able to treat them a little bit. We weren't perfect at it. We're still not perfect. Postpartum depression is such a unique thing in each individual that their treatment, if they elect to have treatment, is so unique to each person and each family situation. The husband has to be involved. The kids have to be involved. Often it's grandma and grandma. The worst culprits ever for postpartum depression is grandma, who says, come on, buck it up. I had 5 kids, didn't have anything. Would you just buck it up, lose a few pounds, get back running, and be like me and go milk the cow? So we just, that was a horrible thing. Grandpa's just totally out of the picture. Grandpas for women in the 70s and 80s were just not with it in terms of understanding or even wanting to understand or to be have very rare
They
to have
smoked
that
cigars
happen.
in the waiting room when their kids were being born.
Pretty
so-
much. They were in
right.
there with Sigmund Freud and
Yeah.
just wondering what was going
Right.
on. What's all the excitement about?
So are you saying, am I understanding this correctly, that it's a combination of hormones and how you feel post-birth self-esteem-wise?
Self-esteem is a big, big part of it.
Would you say it's bigger than the hormonal part?
No, I don't.
Okay.
We don't have studies to indicate whether or not one's
Okay.
bigger than the other. And in each patient, the ratio of self-esteem versus hormones is different. So sometimes the hormonal thing is very difficult for women to deal with. Sometimes it's a self-esteem issue. My tall, skinny girl who gained 70 pounds, hers was a self-esteem issue. Her hormone situation would straighten out very rapidly, but she had been beautiful her whole life and skinny and wonderful, and she just couldn't handle it. And she went through 3 pregnancies, gaining 70 pounds with each pregnancy. And it would take her 4, 5, 6 months to lose that.
While trying to transition into being
A new
a
mom.
new mom the first time, and then a mom to
Managing.
managing those roles and still being attractive to your husband and
Yeah.
all of
Or
those
to
things.
yourself.
Yeah,
She didn't care about her
liking
husband.
what you see in the mirror is huge.
It's very huge.
She was concerned about what she looked like to the world. She was a professional. She had to look good.
Gotcha.
She thought she had to look good, and probably she did. Her success a lot was determined by how she looked, and she felt that was very critical. Hormones with her were quite easy to adjust. They're not always easy. The other thing is a lot of brand new moms. I mean, they feel like they're superwoman too. Why can't I do this? My mom did it. Grandma did it.
Or you're
my neighbor
comparing
did
yourself
it.
to
The Relief Society
Yeah,
president
yeah.
did it.
You're
know, why-
comparing yourself to all the natural mothers that are cloth diapers and kefir and growing yeast and all
Why
these
do I
things.
feel like I want to
yeah.
kill my husband and rub out all the kids and all that kind of thing? Women just can't understand where those thoughts are coming from.
Right.
And
they
there's a
feel
lot of
guilty.
and shame
So
so much.
you know, I remember sitting there after that. I just was shaking, and I never had an experience before that. Growing up, I wouldn't say that I was depressed or I was anxious, but since I've had children, I do suffer from anxiety. I mean, it's definitely moderate now, maybe mild because it's manageable. But I'll tell you, it was so intense that I looked straight at my husband and I said, I now understand why mothers get in the minivans and drive straight into the ocean.
Yeah,
Yep.
right?
We're also in the middle of a Mormon culture right here. And Mormon girls are supposed to be perfect, and they're supposed to do all the things that the Book of Mormon tells them to do, and all the things that the brethren of the church tell them to do, and buck it up and move along. So it's nice when we have, number one, female obstetricians who can take time and talk to them. They're not all great, but they are better generally than the men were, although many men obstetricians become quite sensitive to this issue because everybody deals with it.
Right.
I know very few patients who just have a pregnancy, go through it, have the baby, lose their weight, get right back into it, and it was like nothing. There's a few who like to think they can do that and show the rest of the world, but I think they do a disservice to the rest of the world when they
Right.
act
That's
like
the
this is
poster
easy.
child. Yeah, and I call them professionals. Professional
Men
baby makers.
have no idea what happens to women's bodies with the vaginal area, vaginal delivery, ruining the bladder, ruining bowel control and urinary control, and the stretch marks. And
Yeah.
men just can't relate to that.
And with that weight gain, that rapid weight gain, I mean, it does some stress on the organs itself, you know. I mean,
all through the body. The really neat thing is in the next life, men are going to have the babies. That's already been
oh
arranged.
my
you.
God.
Thank you.
I read
Just
that.
saying.
in
You
the
heard
scriptures.
that right
Yeah.
here live.
Yeah,
we
we've
go.
we've got
That's
that.
He's
under
got a
gospel.
control.
direct line
Yeah.
to the big man. So I'm about to just poo-poo what you said. I was a woman at 32 who got pregnant. I was probably 98 pounds when I got pregnant.
That's late.
And then I topped out at 136 pounds with both of my pregnancies.
It's not
Teeny.
bad.
I was teeny.
Yeah.
And not for lack of eating, it's just the way
Just
my
your
body
frame,
did
yeah.
it. That's what happened. And then I was back into like a size 2.
I hate you.
There are differences. My hips are different.
Yeah.
I was a little more curvy. It actually worked out for me. However, I know that so that I didn't get postpartum depression as much as I was in very difficult relationships when I was pregnant with my children. So there's a darkness. I can totally relate to that darkness and knowing that I was, at times, especially with my second child, that I'm pretty much doing this by myself.
Makes a
And
huge difference.
I mean, I got to tell you, and back to what you said about the Mormon culture, and it's not just the Mormon culture. It's my Italian heritage. It's all over the place with people. Society can put more value on you repressing your feelings about something and not walking through the pain than, just be a trooper and look how strong you are. And meanwhile, you're, in the bathroom, in the shower, crying yourself,
Right.
Through something, and you're afraid to share that. I'm so grateful that that's changing in our society, that mental health is such a big deal right now.
A lot of that is changing, But we still have a lot of women whose total worth in life has to do with how many kids she's got, how well
Ooh.
she's raising them. And we'll always have that. And that's okay. That's strictly their business. But it makes it very difficult for their neighbor who, I mean,
Yeah.
the lady who has
It
7, 8
classifies
kids
you who you are. Yeah, I
and
agree.
turns her whole life to raising these children is very hard on her neighbor who's had 2 kids and doesn't want any more kids. So it's such a unique situation within a neighborhood, within a family, within a community. There's so many things that add into postpartum depression that sometimes it's difficult to sort it all out.
Yeah. Well, I think after practicing for over 45 years in this great county, and how many births did you have?
2,500, most of them paid for them.
Okay, so 2,500. That's 2,500 moms.
So are you now like chasing down those kids? I
Yes.
remember your mother, and she owes me. That's funny.
But
How
I'm
cute.
sure that you, with those moms, that you took such gentle care that you probably saved a lot of their, driving into the ocean. Because I remember thinking, it's do or die,
Oh, yeah.
And if I didn't have that conversation with my doctor, I wouldn't be sitting right here.
This was back before epidurals, so docs had to take a lot of extra time with patients to help them through it, because women were in the valley of the shadow of death when they go through a
Right.
natural delivery. That's a whole different experience. And men, of course, can relate to that very well.
How so? I mean, like, seriously.
That was sarcasm.
Seriously, that's
I was
so
watching.
awesome.
Let me just say this.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been watching The Handmaid's Tale.
I've
and-
heard it's good.
Yeah, there's a scene where she gives birth alone. Spoiler alert. But she's squatting, and it's a very realistic, and I can't even
No,
imagine.
no.
I delivered one child without an epidural.
Soldier.
And it
That's
was
crazy.
I'm glad I did it because I
Aw,
wanted
I've
to
heard it's
experience it.
beautiful.
It was painful. I'm not going to lie. It was not fun and games. And stuff happens to your body. It's not just a baby that's coming out of there. Like all kinds of stuff is.
Yeah. It's traumatic. It really
is.
is. I mean, if
It's
we went
still
into
all
our
over
birth
my
stories,
pants, yeah.
they tell you, when you're pregnant, you're out here, everybody wants to share their birth stories, and you're freaking traumatized. And then you go through your own. And that's literally your tribute in life. You're like, look what I can do.
Yeah.
In closing, our life whack-a-mole. Thanks, Dr. Booth, because I can
Thank
tell
My
you
you,
pleasure.
so much.
you have served our community, and you served me as a dear friend. I thought you'd be a little bit more raunchier than this, but I'm so impressed by you because we needed to talk about this important topic.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Charmaine.
Tina.
Thank you for sharing your experience
Of
with
course.
me and our audience. That takes
Guts.
Raunchy.
Literally.
Where did raunchy come from?
Oh, well, we had a conversation on that over here.
Yeah,
We'll-
and before we
yeah.
turn the mics on, he was
So my life whack-a-mole this week is vulnerability. I actually am practicing it more than every day. So wish me luck because it's not an easy thing. So Doc, what's your life whack-a-mole this week?
I'm not sure what the concept is, but we're trying to sell our home and build a new home, and I'm just so
You
upside
lived
down.
in that home? How
45
long?
years.
45
wow.
years.
That's an undertaking.
Tina's
Huge.
take us home.
Okay, mine is about my child, my oldest daughter who passed her state boards. The practical exam and the written, and she is renting a booth, and Hair by
Thriving.
Marissa, she's blowing
Oh,
me away. I'm
Book now
impressed.
today.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
All right, our lovely
So-
audience, wackos, and another weekend down the drain. And I'll tell you what, we are just so blessed to be here.
So blessed. And as Charmaine likes to say, this is
our gift to you.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
You've been listening to Whack-A-Mole with Tina B and Charmaine G. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Watch us on YouTube and subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Join us next time for, well, whatever may happen with Tina B and Charmaine G on Whack-A-Mole. This has been a production from A Podcast Studio.